You get two kinds of luck, good luck and bad luck. But if you're a professional athlete, you only get one kind, the kind that forces you to choose between your legacy and your legs. Steven Stamkos stood there, eyes fixed on the empty net, a silent testament to every shattered bone and strained ligament. The clock showed 6:39 remaining in the first period of the 2020 Stanley Cup Finals, Game 3 against the Dallas Stars. For 8 minutes, the Tampa Bay Lightning's captain, sidelined yet again by a core muscle injury, transformed from a spectator in a suit to a superhuman blur, delivering a devastating, almost mythical performance few believe possible. He had skated just one shift in the entire postseason. His presence was more symbolic than strategic until this moment. Receiving the puck from Nikita Kucherov, Stamkos accelerated, splitting two defenders with improbable ease. A ghost of his former self suddenly materialized in his prime. And then, the quick release, a signature laser beam of a wrist shot that kissed the twine. He raised his hands, screaming an impossible yell of relief and triumph. But what followed was the real story. He immediately skated back to the bench and never returned to the ice for the rest of the series. This agonizing, iconic 8 minutes of game time wasn't just a goal. It was the ultimate, visceral distillation of Stamkos' entire 15-year career. Brief flashes of devastating brilliance punctuated by inevitable, crushing physical breakdown. He burst onto the scene in 2008 as the highly anticipated #1 draft pick, a prodigy with the quickest release in the game, quickly establishing himself as the league's premier goal scorer, earning his first Rocket Richard Trophy by 2010. By 2012, he had shattered the 60-goal barrier, a benchmark previously reserved for hockey demigods, demonstrating that his one-timer wasn't merely fast, it bent the very laws of physics, making goalies look amateurish. The early years were defined by pure, unadulterated offensive electricity, setting the stage for the next phase of his career, one defined by trauma. Stamkos became a walking medical textbook of high-impact sports injuries, each one an attempt to derail the franchise engine. The most catastrophic occurred in 2013, an ugly, open tibia fracture against Boston, which abruptly halted a season where he was again on pace for 60 goals. He painstakingly rehabilitated only to face repeated, less dramatic but equally debilitating setbacks. Multiple meniscus tears, oblique strains, and the infamous blood clot, thoracic outlet syndrome, in 2016 that demanded emergency surgery, almost costing him his career and potentially his arm. That blood clot incident required the removal of a rib to alleviate compression, a procedure few NHL players successfully returned from due to the complexity and impact on overall movement. His resilience was forged not in the gym, but in the rehab room, transforming a pure scorer into an unlikely, gritty leader focused on team strategy over personal glory. The irony is that as Stamkos' physical dominance waned, his team's collective dominance surged. After years of injury-plagued near misses, the Lightning finally secured back-to-back Stanley Cups in 2020 and 2021, with Stamkos serving as the guiding voice and strategic anchor, a role vastly different from the youthful superstar everyone expected. Consider the psychological shift required. The player designed to score 60 goals had to accept that his primary value was now derived from 8 minutes of perfect, necessary sacrifice in a critical moment, followed by weeks of supporting his teammates from the press box. This transition wasn't facile. It was a profound act of ego sublimation, demonstrating that true leadership isn't about being the strongest, but being the essential cog, even if only briefly. Stamkos' career is less a continuous narrative arc and more a collage of explosive, separated moments, strung together by years of surgical scars and recovery. His continued elite performance into his mid-30s, despite the accumulated damage, is an anomaly. He remains one of the league's most productive offensive players, even after multiple limb-threatening injuries, a testament to medical advances and inhuman dedication. Fact 1. Stamkos is one of only 3 NHL players in history to win the Rocket Richard Trophy both before and after suffering a major limb fracture. Fact 2. During the 2020 Cup run, team doctors had calculated the core muscle injury had only a 15% chance of holding up against a full-throttle shift, making his 8-minute gamble a calculated risk with a potentially catastrophic physical cost. Fact 3. After his 2016 blood clot operation, doctors privately estimated his explosive shot velocity would permanently drop by 10 to 15%. Yet data shows he returned to peak velocity within 2 seasons. The man is statistically improbable. We celebrate him for the cups, the goals, and the resilience, yet we rarely acknowledge the chilling trade-off. What if the blood clot and the shattered leg weren't just bad luck, but necessary physical resets, forcing a player built exclusively for scoring to develop the defensive intelligence and leadership grit required for a championship team? Did fate, or physics, deliberately break the greatest natural scorer of his generation only so he could become the indispensable captain? This brings us back to that one perfect shift in 2020. The climax isn't the goal itself. The climax is the stark realization that Steven Stamkos' defining moment, the act that secured his legend, was the conscious choice to risk every remaining healthy nerve and fiber in his body for 8 minutes of glorious, punishing effort, knowing it would likely end his participation in the series he had spent his life chasing. It wasn't triumph. It was controlled self-destruction for the greater good. We look at the rings and assume a perfect trajectory, but the data suggests a different story, a continuous battle against entropy, where every goal scored comes at an exponentially increasing physical debt. Does a sustained legacy of dominance fundamentally depend on a champion's repeated ability to cash in their greatest physical assets, year after agonizing year? Did he possess the capacity for 2 kinds of luck, good luck and bad luck?